I can share my screen. Yeah, so the quiz 2 is scheduled tomorrow, and I hope you would have prepared for that exam as well. So as usual, what we'll be doing today is we'll be walking you through the mock paper. Well, I'm expecting that most of you would have already tried solving that paper, and maybe you would have collected all of the doubts that you may have, or even from the general syllabus as well. Okay, so I think we can get started. I have already been made co-host. So yeah, I would just like to know that if you guys have any queries, maybe we can discuss those first, and after that we can start with the mock paper, or we can first go through the mock paper, and after that we can take up your queries. Anything is fine. So any suggestions?
Sir, I think first we can do the mock paper.
Okay. So may I know how many of you have already completed solving it? Okay, you have already done it, right? Is there anyone else who has attempted the mock paper? Okay. Okay, great, nice. All right, so I'll share my screen. Okay. Are there any major problems in the mock? Is there any question that is troubling you in any sense?
Sir, promises, like the async promises.
Okay, promises. All right. So I'm expecting that my screen should be visible to all of you by now.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Visible.
So yeah, this is a mock paper. I guess there are just 15 questions. Yeah. Okay. So we'll start with the first question here. So what we need to find out is that we are given a program here, and we need to predict the output after 10 seconds if this will be executed. So if we look at it, we'll see that what is happening in this program is that we are just creating a promise, and there may be some conditions which are the deciding factor that whether the promise would be resolved or rejected. So as we can see that in this promise, both of the arguments have been given. The first argument will always be a resolve. The second argument will always be a reject. Does not matter what name conventions have been used. If I would have used REJ in place of RES, then this REJ would have been the resolve parameter. And this RES, if used in place of REJ, would have been the reject parameter. So don't go by names, just go by positions. Okay. The first position is given to the resolve parameter. The second is given to the reject parameter. So what is happening here is that we are using set timeout method, and okay, so that's quite simple. What it is doing is it is waiting for 2000 milliseconds. That means 2 seconds. And after waiting for such time, what it is doing here, it is resolving this promise with a message statement 1. Now again, please note here that we are resolving this promise. What is RES? RES is the first parameter or the first argument given to this promise constructor. And as we have already discussed, that the first position in the promise constructor would always be given to the resolve parameter. Okay, so that means the promise will get resolved with message or with value statement 1. Now we have written a chain of then or catch blocks here in order to handle the fulfillment or the rejection of the promise. So what since this promise has been resolved, catch won't come into play until and unless we explicitly generate an error. So the very first thing, or the control will go into this first then block. What is going to happen is this is going to get an argument called R. Can someone tell me what this R is?
Resolve.
Sorry?
It is a resolve message,
Resolve.
statement 1.
Exactly. So R is what? It is the statement 1. That means it is the message this promise has resolved. Okay, so that is statement 1. But we are not using this R anywhere in this then definition. What we are doing is we are logging a message that is statement 2 on the console, and we are returning R as it is. So that means we are not displaying that message that the promise is resolved with on the console as of now. So the very first message that will be shown on the console is statement 2. Now the next thing comes is that we are returning this R. Now we know R is what? R is statement 1. So that means this R returned what? It returned a string that is statement 1. The control will go into this next then block. Now what is this R? This R is what the previous then has written. And what previous then has written, it has written the exactly same message, that is statement 1. And what we are doing with that message is we are showing it as it is on the screen. So R got statement 1. What we did is we simply put it out, we simply dumped it out on the console. So the output would be in sequence statement 2, then statement 1. And after that, since this then is not returning anything, can someone tell me what would be returned by this then block? Or what would be received by this R
Undefined.
parameter?
Undefined, sir.
Exactly. If nothing is being returned, undefined is the value that would be returned in that case. So this then is going to get the value undefined. Now this gets undefined and it shows undefined as it is on the screen. Now, what about this catch? Do you think this catch block would be invoked here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Exactly, it won't be, because neither the promise has been rejected nor there is any error. So the final output that this program would generate is statement 2, statement 1, and undefined. So 2, 1, and undefined. So third one is the answer. Yeah.
Sir, can you repeat the last line you have spoken? Like I just disconnected.
You mean about the catch one?
No, sir. In the then what will be returned? You like you questioned it. What will be returned in the then block? As nothing is returned.
Okay, so what you are able to see here is that this then. Okay, let us first talk about the first then. So what is happening here is we are explicitly using the return keyword and we are returning something. What we are returning is R. Now R may have some value. It may be an integer. It may be a number. It may be a string, or it may be some other kind of value. It may be an object. Okay. So we are explicitly returning something. That means whichever then comes next in this it is going to get this object as a parameter. So this R is going to get this value as its parameter. So since it was statement 1, so this R got statement 1. But if you talk about this then, so this is returning none or instead nothing, right? So what we say is that the next then in the chain receives what the previous then has returned. But here we see that this then, the previous then to this, has not returned anything. In all such cases, what would be received by this parameter is, in case the previous then is not returning anything, this would receive undefined. So since this R received undefined, the same should be displayed on the console as well. Is that okay? Is that okay? Is that clear?
Sir, it is must that previous
Yes, sir,
then
it is clear.
should return something.
Yeah, if you
Hello,
have
sir?
something, if you have something written in the chain that comes after that, so, and as you know that then has a parameter, that is what the parameter has a value that is to be returned by the previous thing in the chain. So suppose if this is the first then, what it is expecting is it is expecting some message from the result. If you don't pass any message, what would it get? It would get undefined. So the same thing is with the others as well.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Okay, so the answer here would be statement 2, 1, and undefined. Again, we have been insisting quite a many times on this thing that please don't go by the naming conventions here. Naming conventions, just ignore them, right? You don't need to worry about what the name is. Just go by positions, right? The order in which these parameters are being used. Okay, so this is a simple thing. So consider the following JavaScript program and predict output again. So we have an array of 5 elements. What we do is we delete. Here are 2. So what delete operator does is it basically deletes the element from the memory, but what it does is it doesn't change the length of the array. So the length of the array would still remain 5, but what will happen to the index to the element that is stored at index 2 is it would become undefined. So the index 2 here, it would be this element 3. That means now the array would become, after executing this delete operator statement, 1, 2, undefined, 4, and 5. So the length is supposed to be 5, and this ARR2 is supposed to be undefined. So 5 and
Sir, you are not audible.
hello, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I
Yes, sir,
got
audible.
disconnected. All right. Just give me a minute. Just make myself a co-host. Okay, all right. So I'll again start sharing. Okay, I hope my screen is now visible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Great. So I guess I got disconnected when I started with this question. So what I was saying is that we are given a list of words here, and you need to find out which all of these are not keywords in JavaScript language.
Sir,
So
array and undefined.
okay, so array is definitely something that is not a keyword here in JavaScript. For, of course, we use for loops in JavaScript. Continue is used to skip an iteration in a loop. So both of these things are keywords. You cannot use them as identifiers. But what about undefined? How many of you think that undefined is not a keyword? And can you justify the statement? Yes, anyone?
It is a value, I think.
Sir, it's not a keyword.
It's not a keyword. How do you define that something is a keyword or not?
Sir, we can assign a variable named undefined.
Okay, you can use them as identifiers, right? As a function name or as a variable name, whatever it is, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so do you think that you can use undefined as an identifier? That means as a variable name. Just like you use A, B, C. Similarly, can you use undefined in place of them? Let's say I have written let B equals to 5. Can I replace B with undefined?
It can be undefined as a variable can be used, but it's not a keyword. We cannot means like for or continue is a keyword.
Correct.
Undefined is not a keyword. Undefined as a string, considering as a variable, if I want to assign any value or string, I can do that. But certainly it's not a keyword.
Okay. So maybe if I'll just show you that it is quite possible to do it using undefined keyword. I'll just open any JavaScript compiler on the screen. So say what I'm doing is I'm saying that let A equals to 7. So this is a perfectly fine expression in JavaScript. What we are doing is we are creating an identifier A, a variable name A, which we are initializing with 7. But let's say if I'll try to use a keyword here, like we just saw for or continue, let's say we use for. What do you think? What is going to happen? Am I going to get a syntax error this time?
Yes, there will be an error.
Yes, sir, there will be error.
There will definitely be a syntax error. So you can see that unexpected token. So if this is a keyword, then it should again generate an error, right? For this line number 60. But what happens is that it doesn't do that. What it does is it simply accepts it. No issues. I'm okay with it. Okay. But one thing here is console.log. Now, what do you think? What's going to be the output?
Nothing should be output or maybe error.
Sorry?
Nothing should be output.
Okay. The output is going to be the one that you have written here. That is the undefined value itself.
So
No, wait. Maybe. Okay, let me just create a simple one. So it should not happen that it should give this value 7. So if I'll change it with where. Okay. All right. So what is happening here is that it is basically, taking it as a complete identifier. I'm not sure what is happening because it should not happen. It should be given a value of undefined only. I'm not sure what is happening right now. But yeah, one thing is sure that it is not a keyword. So ideally, what should happen here is that even if we try to assign some value to this undefined identifier, and if we try to log this value somewhere, then it should not give the value that is assigned. It should give what it actually is, that is undefined itself, that we are getting right now. So maybe I'll just check this, that what is the issue behind this, or what is the reason behind this, and then maybe we can discuss. So this basically proves that undefined is not a keyword in JavaScript language, since we are able to use it as an identifier. And if we try to use a keyword as an identifier, it straight away gives us an error. Okay, so is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this question is regarding view, theory-based question. A child component has no way to directly access. I think we already have discussed such question in one of the live sessions earlier. So a child component has no way to directly access the properties of a parent. What do you think? Is the statement true or false?
False.
If true, why? If false, why?
It's
False
false.
because using
Sir,
props.
No, using $parent, we can access properties of parent.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, just like there is a variable called this dot dollar store in case we tend to use Vue.x store in our application. Similarly, there is one more variable called, as Chandrasekhar mentioned, that parent variable, through which you can access the properties of a parent as well in Vue. So, of course, the first statement is false because this is quite possible. A computed property only gets triggered when at least one of its reactive dependencies changes, assuming the page rendering has already been completed. So it says that the computed property is only going to change whenever one of its reactive dependency undergo any change.
Yes,
Otherwise, it is
Yes,
not
sir,
going
this
to
is
be
true.
invoked. Sorry.
Sir,
It is
this is
true.
true.
Okay, this is true statement. Okay, so how a computed property is different from a method then?
Method will be triggered only when it is invoked.
A method will be invoked all the times when?
Like when it will be invoked, then method will be triggered. But a computed property is a
Sir, I have a
reactive property, so that's why whenever the reactive dependency changes.
sir. I'm
The
having
computer
a
property
doubt.
cached.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So there are 4 life cycles: before created, before mount, and mounted.
Yes.
So once mounted is done, the DOM is ready. Means it is it is rendered, and it says that assuming the page rendering has already been completed, means mounted has done.
It does not guarantee that the page has completed its rendering. It does not guarantee mounted hook.
And then when it is going to give a guarantee, sir? After that, we are having destroy.
So there is a piece of code that you can use inside your mounted hook.
Okay.
So basically, that is a condition. That means you only want a certain code to be executed when the page has completed its rendering. So the mounted hook in itself does not guarantee that. You can assume that the rendering has been started and most of it has been done, but guaranteeing it has been completed, that's not.
No, entire rendering means suppose I'm writing some code and depending upon code, some rendering is pending, except that the basic virtual DOM is ready for rendering, that we can say after mounted, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So considering that, then this statement will be true.
Which one? You are talking about second statement.
The computed property only gets triggered when at least one of its reactive dependency changes. This one.
Exactly. So what happens in case of, let's say, okay, let's say in case of methods, like, Rakesh just has mentioned that whenever a re-render for the page will happen, the methods will always get triggered, right? That means, let's say if you are using one computed property on a page and one method, you are invoking one method on the same page itself. Now, let's say what happens is, like, you are using a mistake expression on that page, and whenever the value of that variable or that mistake expression changes, a re-render is going to happen. That means the page is going to be updated. Now, whenever that page is going to be updated, that method is going to be invoked no matter what. But in case of computed property, what happens is that they only get invoked when one of its reactive dependency changes. Otherwise, how it is going to access the previous value when a page rendering is happening? Where does it get to know that what the value should be if this computed property function is not getting executed? Are you getting my question? What I'm trying to ask?
No, sir. Will you please explain?
What I'm saying is, let's say a re-render has just happened, and the method is triggered, right? Now, since method is triggered, then wherever that method would have been used, that parameter would have gotten some value, and that's why it is ready to be displayed on the web page.
Yes.
But what about computed property? We just saw that a re-render has just happened. So how the computed property will get to know what's the value that is to be displayed if that is not getting triggered? If it is triggered, then of course, there is no question. It would be triggered, it will return a value that we can use.
Then is it undefined in that case? Because
the whole purpose of using computed property is this thing itself, right? What we want is, we don't want a certain function to be triggered until and unless. So until and unless any of its internal variable is not changing, how that value is going to be accessed, it is going to be stored somewhere in the cache, and that cached value is going to be used for. So that means if in the entire life cycle of an application, if none of the reactive dependencies of a computed property changes, that means if none of them changes, the computed property function is never going to be triggered. It is always going to use the value from where? Cache. Okay, so that is how computed properties are different from methods, and that is why we generally use them.
Sir, suppose the computer property is triggered and I re-rendered the page. Now the cache will have the previous value.
Yes.
So is it possible the computer property now will show the cached value? Whatever the earlier value was there, that will be shown over there.
The cache would be updated each time this function gets triggered.
Okay. So when I render, the cache is also going to get updated.
No. Why cache would be updated?
Then
see, what you are doing is you are just re-rendering, and whatever the previous values have been stored in the cache, you are just using them as it is.
Okay. Fine.
And whenever a computed property function gets triggered, so wherever it is being stored in the cache, that value will get updated.
Okay. Clear, sir.
1 second. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Abhishek,
Hello, sir.
I have a question. When you're
Yeah.
referring to methods, when you're saying methods means it is we have two classes of methods, right? One is the hook methods, others are the methods that we write for our convenience, user-defined.
Yeah.
So hook methods are invoked during the life cycle, whereas user-defined methods, they need to be explicitly invoked anyways, right?
Exactly, yes.
So those are not dependent on reactive changes anyways, the user-defined ones.
Correct.
We have to explicitly invoke them.
Exactly.
But when you're, all the discussion that you just made is only related to the hook methods, right?
Only related to?
Now, whatever you explained so far, it is only in the context of hook methods, that is lifecycle methods, right?
No. Say what you are doing is you have written some code on your web page, and you are trying to show a value on your web page which is dependent on the output of a certain function that you have defined on your own. That is a user-defined function. So what I'm saying is that whenever a re-render for that page happens, that function will automatically get invoked.
Okay, so the hook methods, let's say you, like as Chandrasekhar was mentioning, there are 4 lifecycle methods until mounted. So once all the 4 are invoked, right? So are you saying that when any reactive component, reactive property got changed, so at least the mounted method won't get called? So mounted method gets called only one time, is it? Like it's not at all dependent on the property changes?
No. Whenever a re-render happens, all of such methods are going to be invoked, and the component has to go through the entire life cycle again.
Correct. So when the re-render happens, re-render, does it happen when any of the property changes or no?
Yeah, of course. Let's say if you have a variable, a simple variable, let's say A, that you are showing on the web page, and let's say you try to change the value of that A variable.
Right.
So now the value has changed. Since view is reactive, it is going to automatically update whenever a change in the variable happens. So it is going to re-render, initiate the re-render for that page.
Right.
So if the re-render is happening, definitely all of the lifecycle hooks would get invoked. But if you have a user-defined method somewhere in that web page,
correct,
then it would be invoked as well. But so generally, what we do in case of method is that they are basically binded with some events. Let's say if you click somewhere, you enter something, or you do such so and so things.
Correct. So let's say hypothetically, let's say there is a text box and there is a button, and we attached a method to a button. So now the user-defined method is attached to the event handler, right? So when user clicks on the button, user-defined method gets invoked, and we in effect we modify, let's say, a variable.
Okay.
Now the sequence, if I can illustrate the sequence. First, the user-defined method gets invoked, which changes the property, which results in the invocation of the mounted method, or will all the life cycle gets called? Or
so if that variable is going to make changes on the page, that means re-render is happening, and that means all of those life cycle hooks will get invoked.
And then all the 4 of them, is it? The created won't get
everything.
All of them, all 4 of them, right?
Yes.
Then afterwards, the computer property method gets invoked, is it?
No. Computer property would only get invoked when one of its reactive dependency change.
Correct. Let's say this computer property method, a computer property is dependent on that variable to which that event handler is attached.
Yeah, it is derived from, yes.
So the sequence is first user-defined method, then the hook methods, then the computer property.
Yeah, so if the variable that you have changed using method, and that is also acting as a reactive dependency for a computer property, then of course that will get executed as well.
All right, yeah, thanks.
Okay, tried this snippet in the Firefox inspect console, and it is printing undefined, not the value 10. Yeah. So there are quite many things that may differ browser to browser. So that's why even I was confused.
I think that the IDEs are printing the value, but without IDE, it is printing just undefined.
Okay. Okay, maybe let me try here. So Edge uses Chrome-like interface, so that should work here as well. Yeah, okay. So it is something related to IDs. So I'm not sure what is happening. Ideally, it should not show the value that is assigned, because ultimately it is undefined only. Okay, anyways. Yeah, so let us get back to this question. So what we were discussing is about computed property, and yeah, we discussed that computed property, they only get triggered whenever one of its internal variable changes. Otherwise, it won't be triggered no matter what. So yeah, means okay, there is a condition that assuming the page rendering has already been completed. That means the initial phase, the first time that page is rendering, of course, that time the computed property has to be triggered in order to get the initial value to store it in the cache. Okay, so the second option is correct. The third option is that the view model, the view directive v model is used for two-way data binding. So of course that's true. We use v model in order to bind the data from the HTML to view and from view to HTML. That means whenever there is a change in the HTML, it impacts on the view properties as well. And when you directly or when you try to change the value in the view itself, then it affects on the HTML pages. So yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, okay. So is that okay? I think no one should be having any issues with the third option. That's a quite simple one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So since this is a SQ, so yeah, two options are correct. First option is not. So consider the following view application with JavaScript and markup. We need to find out, suppose fetch request to this URL /API/code/100 fails due to the network error. What will be rendered by the browser? Okay. So for that, you need to keep the basic definition of fetch function in your mind. So maybe if you would have read about it, you would have read that the fetch function or the promise given by this fetch function or returned by this fetch function, it only gets rejected when there is a network error. Otherwise, for every other case, what it does is the promise gets resolved. However, it just sets the OK status to false in that case. But in case a network failure happens, the promise gets rejected. The promise won't even be resolved in that case. Otherwise, in every other case, it will be resolved at least. So in that case, we are talking about that exception. That means that there is a network error and the promise is going to be rejected. The promise returned by the fetch function. So we have to look at where this fetch function is being used. So here it is. This function is being used here, and it is saying that the API 400, API 400. Yeah. So since there is going to be network error, it is mentioned in the question statement itself, and there is just a catch handler, just after that fetch, and this catch handler is going to be invoked when the promise returned by this fetch is rejected. So we know that this promise is going to be rejected because there is a network failure. So what will happen is we'll go inside the body of this catch. That means the control will go inside, and what will it do is there is some variable called isSuccess in the view, and it is going to change it to false. So in view, there is variable called isSuccess, which is by default initialized with true. But what we are doing right now is, after that promise has been rejected, we are making it false. After that, this .error.code, that means error should be an object and code is a property of that object. So yeah, here it is, error, and it has two properties, code and message. So what we are doing is we are just changing the code. Okay, we are changing the message as well. So this .error.message, we are changing it to could not fetch data. So now, three things to keep in mind. The value of isSuccess is now false. isSuccess is now false, which was initialized with true initially. The value of code is unknown, and the value of messages could not fetch data. Right? So these three values have been changed. Now, if we look at the HTML, so this is basically asking us what will be shown. Yeah, what will be rendered by the browser. So if we look at it, there are basically three components. One is course, the other one is error. Sorry, not three components, two components. The other one is just so course and error components. Now, if we see here that let's not talk about this prop as of now, that is course prop. What we will see is that if this component is going to be rendered or not. What is going to decide if this will be rendered or not? This thing, this variable. if this is true, that means if will become true and this course component will be rendered. If this becomes false, then the else component would be rendered. That is this error component. So this time we have just seen that is success has been changed to false, right? Inside that cache definition. So this condition, this if will become false, and that means course component is not going to be rendered. If this is not going to be rendered, we are not worrying about what this course is, right? We are not worrying about what this prop is, but we have to worry about what this error component is and what prop we are passing in here. So since this is a VL's component, and since the if condition has evaluated to be false, so this would be executed. Now here as a prop, so error is a prop, and what we are passing to this prop is the value of error. Now what is error here? So error is this object itself, which has two properties. One is code, the other one is message. So we have to look into this component, that is error component. What is happening? What it is trying to display on the screen. So what error component does is it receives this props, that is error. Remember, it is an object. So in the H1 heading, it shows the code. So code is what? Code is unknown. And message. Message is what? Could not fetch data. So ultimately what it is going to show is unknown and could not fetch data. This is going to be the output. So first one is going to be the answer. Unknown could not fetch data. Yeah, unknown could not fetch data. All right. So is there any issue in this question?
No, sir, it's clear.
Okay. All right. We have the next question based on the code given in previous question itself. So this time it is saying that suppose the fetch request to this response with status code as 404. Remember, this is not a network failure. That means the promise is going to be resolved. The status code is 404 and the response body is course not found. Okay. So the request goes here. This catch is not going to come into play this time because the promise is going to be resolved. So we'll come here. What it will check is that if there is some response, yes, there will definitely be. So what we do is we check, okay, we check the data, all right. And after that, we check that what is the OK status. Now, what do you feel? What is going to be the OK status in case the status code is 404?
Sir, false.
OK status will be failed.
OK status will be false, exactly. So in that case, what will happen is you are changing. So that means course is again an object in view. Yeah, course is an object and name and code are two properties for that. So what you are doing for name is,
Sir?
Okay, sorry, we should not
Yes.
look into this condition. We should look into the else part. So this time again, is success has been made false. So initially it was true, but now it has been made false. Error.code is made what? Is rest.status. So what is rest.status? It is described in the question statement,
404.
that is 404. And the message is internal server error. Remember that if success is false, that means this course component is again not going to be rendered since this condition becomes false. Now, when we come to this error component, so error is again a prop. We go to error component, it shows error.code, it shows error.message. Error.code is 404, error.message is course not found or something like that. Yeah, course not found. So ultimately the answer would be 404 and internal server error. Right, course not found was the response body, but what we are showing in error.message is this message, that is internal server error. So these the message given in the response body and the message given here, they both are different. So the answer would be 404 internal server error. Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So which of the following shows the correct output after 20 seconds that the blue program is executed? So we have promise1 function, promise2 function, and then we have something promise all, and we are calling promise all. Okay, so what is going to happen is,
So is this option wrong?
maybe just give me a minute. Okay, let's try to go by sequence. So what is happening here is we have defined three functions: promise1, promise2, promise all, and at last we are calling this promise all function. What this promise all function is doing, it is using this promise.all. So what this promise.all does is, I hope you all should be aware of this, that this basically accepts an iterable. An iterable of what? An iterable of promises. So this promise.all is accepting a list, and this list consists of what? Promise 1 function, promise 2 function, and what promise 1 and promise 2 functions are returning is they are basically returning promises. Okay, so ultimately this is a list of promises. So the way this promise.all function works is that if all of the promises in this iterable are resolved, then this promise, that means the promise that is going to be returned by this promise.all function, would also be resolved. So remember, this is going to return a single promise. Promise.all is going to return a single promise based on all of the promises that it gets in the iterable. Now the condition is that the promise returned by promise.all will only be resolved if all of the promises that are passed inside the iterable are resolved. That means if the promise returned by promise 1 function is resolved, if the promise returned by promise 2 function is also resolved, or in case you pass an empty iterable, then I guess it is also resolved. But right now, what we are interested in is that we have 2 promises here. We have to check that whether these 2 promises are resolving or not. If these 2 promises resolve, then this promise will also get resolved, and it is going to receive some value in this res, and we'll simply dump it out on the screen. So let's first talk about promise 1. So what promise 1 does is, it returns a promise. It takes just one parameter that is resolved. That means there is no way this promise can be rejected. So one thing is sure, that this is going to be resolved. So what it does is, it shows console.log promise 1 is done. And okay. So after waiting for 2000 milliseconds, it resolves. If we talk about promise 2, after waiting for 1000 milliseconds, this second promise resolves. So if we are interested in to find out the sequence of output, so can someone tell me which one would be shown first? Promise 2 is done or promise 1 is done?
Promise 2.
Sir, promise 2 is done.
The reason?
The delay is
Because-
lesser.
Yeah.
Set
The reason
timeout
is that the delay in the promise 2 is lesser than given in promise 1. So this promise is going to be fulfilled after just 1 second. This will take a couple of seconds. Okay. So promise 2 is done, promise 1 is done is going to be the first 2-line output for this program. But that is not the end. We also need to look at this. Since we know that both of these promises have resolved, that means the overall promise that is going to be returned by this promise.all is also going to be resolved. Okay. Now what it does is, this then basically receives what parameter called res. Now what this res is, it is basically a list. A list of what? A list of outputs for all of the promises that these promises have returned. That means if promise 1 has returned some output, promise 2 has returned some output. So this res is basically a list that consists of all of those outputs, right? Or all of those messages that these promises have resolved. But there is one thing that matters here. The first element in that list, that is this res list, will always be the value that is returned by promise 1. That means that is returned by the first element in this iterable, in this list. So the very first element in that list is going to be the value or the message that is returned by promise 1, irrespective of which one is resolved first. So we saw that promise 2 resolved before promise 1. But here, when we are trying to find out that what this list is going to be, we need to keep the sequence in mind. Doesn't matter which one resolved first. So the message returned by promise 1 is going to be the first element. The message returned by promise 2 is going to be the second element. So what is returned by promise 1? It is 1. What is returned by promise 2? It is 2. So according to this program, the output should be promise 2 is done, promise 1 is done, and after that this rest should be a list consisting of 2 elements. The first element is 1, the second element is 2. So fourth option should be the correct option.
So sir, after 1 second, the promise 2 is done, that will be printed, and after 2 seconds, the promise 1 and will be is done, and then the list will be printed, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, someone was saying that maybe the correct answer is not here. Is that doubt cleared here?
Yes, sir. I haven't paid attention to the delay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Bhavya has raised hand.
Sir, could you please explain the logic of the res once again? Like the list that is being
So what
returned
it
by
does
our
is, this res is what? This is basically a list. A list of what? A list of outputs or the messages that are returned by the promises here in the site. But the sequence of the output that is maintained in this res list is the same. That is the sequence maintained in this iterator. Doesn't matter that, okay, let's say if there are 10 promises in this list and the 10th one finished first, the 8th one finished second, the third one finished third, and similarly 6th one finished at fourth, and similarly such order. But what is going to happen in this list is the very first element in this list is always going to be the one that is returned by the first promise in this sequence. Doesn't matter if this promise is resolving at the last position in this sequence.
So can we say delay wise, whoever comes first, that order will be maintained?
Delay wise?
Yes. Now here we have the delay of 1 second and 2 seconds.
No. The delay doesn't matter.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that doesn't matter at what stage these promises are getting resolved. What matters is the sequence. If all of these promises are resolved, so the very first element in this list is going to be the output or the message that is returned by the first promise in this list. That is promise 1. Does not matter whether it resolved first or whether it resolved last. The output that this promise generates is going to be the first element in this list.
So
are you getting my point? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So console.log is delay wise, but the resolved list is like sequence wise.
Correct. Of course, means this console.log will only get executed when this promise resolves. The overall promise resolves. And when this overall promise is going to resolve, when every other promise has been resolved.
Okay, and sir, what if there is some error? We are not.
If there is a failure, that means this overall promise that is returned by this promise.all is going to be rejected.
Okay. Will there be some like particular message?
Of course, you can handle it using catch.
Okay.
It's up to you.
Okay.
So, Bhavya, did you get my point? What I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir, got it.
So, yeah, in that sense, the fourth option is going to be the correct one. All right. So, fill in code 1 and code 2. So, this is regarding store, which can be used in UX store to update the students, state variable with the object of students retrieved from the database. State variable with the object of students retrieved from the database. Okay. So, what we are given here is this is a store. Strict has been made through, so you can ignore it as of now. There are 3 variables in the state. One is student total, students. So, the students. Okay, so the students is something that we need to update here. There is a mutation, add data, state, students, data. All right. So what we are required to do is we need to fill in that what should be the appropriate value at code 1 and code 2 placeholder. So the very first thing that you can, basically go with is that you have to first think that what this code 1 should be. You have seen that there is already a state, there is already a mutations. That means either it is going to be getters or it is going to be actions. Now you know that getters cannot be async. Right? What is async is in case of UX stores? What can be async? What can be asynchronous?
Actions.
Actions can be asynchronous. So the very first thing that is confirmed is code 1 is going to be actions. So since code 1 is actions and we are defining one action, that means one function here that is fetch data, that is receiving context as the parameter. What it is doing is it is fetching the data using this fetch API. We are not interested in that how this API looks like. We are just saying that what should be the appropriate value at port 2 if this promise resolves, or if the OK status is set to true. So the data has already been gotten using this response.json. So we need to write a statement here that should update this students array. So can someone tell me what can be an appropriate value for port 2 placeholder? So you can also get a hint that this students is being updated by this mutation. So a simple hint is that in this port 2 placeholder, you need to invoke this add data mutation with the appropriate parameter. So that appropriate parameter that is to be passed here is data. So a simple straightforward question for you is that how do you invoke this mutation passing this variable?
State.add data.
Sorry?
Committing the mutation function.
Sorry, your voice was a bit...
like actions commit the mutations. So you have to commit the add data with the data attribute.
Okay, all right. So the first one is going to be actions for sure, but the next thing is going to be context.dispatch, right?
No, sir.
Context.commit, no?
Okay, so when dispatch is used?
So that is not sure. I was about to ask that.
Anyone else? When dispatch is used? Dispatch is used for actions, correct. Okay. So just the way you are invoking mutations using commit, the same way you invoke actions using dispatch. Okay, so the correct answer for this question is of course third. The only thing that makes the difference is this dispatch and commit. So, okay, since we are discussing about Vuex storage, so let us just discuss or recall one more thing. Can someone tell me that what is the ideal flow in a Vuex store? What should invoke what? What should be an ideal life cycle? Let's say we have a component that want to make changes in the state in the Vuex store. So what should be the ideal flow? How the component should send that request so that the state can be updated?
Action will commit mutation, and then mutation will change the instance variable, like, and then it will be shown in the component.
But how you said that the action will commit the mutations, but how the action will get to know that this mutation has to be committed?
Okay, so
actions are user-defined functions.
So action should be called.
So correct. The component should dispatch the action. The action should mutate the, the action should commit the mutation, and mutation in turn should change the state. Okay, this is the ideal flow. Component to actions, actions to mutations, mutations to state. Is it okay?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Yeah, yes, Bhavya.
Sir, if it's an action, shouldn't we be using dispatch for it? Because it aligns with the code as well. I mean, we can't, it's in the same code block as the actions, no? So shouldn't we be dispatching it instead of committing?
What actions does, what an action does is, an action commits certain mutations.
Right, sir.
That's what we just discussed. A component is going to dispatch an action. An action will commit a mutation, and that mutation at last is going to make the state change. So if this is an action, then action should be committing mutations. So this is what we are doing here.
So sir, when would we use dispatch?
Dispatch would be used from the component. Right, let's say you click on a button and you have written a user-defined function, by binding a click event to that button. And inside that definition, you are going to say this dot store dot dispatch, something like that. So the action would be invoked by a component.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
So this is regarding local storage. So the local storage for a given domain automatically gets cleared after a system reboot. The local storage objects for a domain and its subdomain are the same. One can store JavaScript objects in local storage for a given domain. The local storage is not supported by Internet Explorer. Okay, what do you think about the first option?
Local storage is not like cleared. It should be cleared manually.
Correct. So local storage is
persistent
kind of a
storage would
persistent
exist.
storage. Sorry.
Persistent storage would exist even after the system gets rebooted. Session storage would not, but persistent would.
Correct, correct. So local storage is a persistent storage. The local storage would not get cleared until and unless the user does that. Okay. So do you have any issues with it? That local storage is a persistent storage?
No, sir.
Okay, Bhavya, do you have any issues with this statement?
No, sir.
Okay. So yeah, the local storage for a given domain automatically gets cleared after a system reboot. That's not correct because it needs to be cleared by the user only. So we need to find out the true statement. The first one is definitely not. The local storage objects for a domain and its subdomain are the same. What do you think?
In these things, sir, I have a confusion, like not getting this concept.
A simple thing is, let's say you have a website, rakesh.com, and a subdomain of that website is, let's say, abc.rakesh.com. So the simple question is that the local storage that is maintained for rakesh.com, is it going to be the same for the abc.rakesh.com?
Okay, it is.
Did you get my
No,
question?
sir, it will not.
Okay, firstly, did you get my question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what do you think? Is it going to be same? I got one response that it's not going to be same.
Yes, it's not going to be same.
Exactly, it's not going to be. So the local storage or even the session storage, they maintain different objects for each origin. See, what we say is that these are the objects for a given origin. And what an origin consists of is, it is basically the scheme, or that is the protocol, HTTP, HTTPS, things like that. The second thing that comes in is the domain. So what happens is that the domain changes in case of a domain and subdomain. So firstly, we are saying rakesh.com. So this is the domain for first case. And if we say that now the domain is abc.rakesh.com, so the domain itself changes. And if the domain changes, the storage object is going to be changed. So there are basically three things. One is the scheme or the protocol. The second thing is this domain. The third thing is the port number. If any of these things changes, the storage is going to be different. Okay. Let's say even if you have abc.com, which is running at port number 80, and abc.com, which is running at port number 5000, the storage objects for them are going to be different since the port number is different.
So is it port number dependent, or as a domain is completely having the separate?
As I said, there are three things. There are three things. One is scheme, or what we call protocol. The second thing is this domain. The third thing is the port number. If any of these three changes, the storage object changes. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Sir, one thing here, like in the Mozilla web docs, that website, actually I changed it to that thing, and then it is not showing in some other browser. Like in my PC, it is that thing, but in mobile, it is not that thing. So that's why I thought that it is local storage. Like and it is also available in the local storage also, like in the inspect option. But when I set in the one like website of Mozilla Web Docs, any other domain like subdomain in the Mozilla Web Docs, it is showing the dark theme. So how is it? is there any other concept that we don't know?
There are mechanisms using which you can access the local storage of your root or maybe of your subdomain. There are mechanisms for that. But the thing is, they are not directly accessible. Now, what do I mean? Whether they are directly accessible or not? I open both of these websites in two different tabs in my browser. Let's say one is abc.com, the other one is abc.abc.com. And I inspect their local storage and their session storage. They are not going to be seen. This is what I'm saying. But there are mechanisms through which they can be accessed.
Okay, sir. Got it. Okay, so if I want to spread in all the subdomains, there are some other like APIs or something like that.
Not exactly APIs.
I mean, there is some other like processes using which I can spread it.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the local storage objects for a domain and its subdomain are the same. That is again not a correct option. Maybe I can show you one example. That just after changing the port number, these things go away. Maybe what I can do is I can open VS Code if I have something. I would have done something in storage APIs. Okay, I hope there should be some data available from the last time, the local storage data. Okay. So I go to inspect application, local storage. So you can see that there are already 3 key value pairs: name, Abhi, age, 22, key value. Just note down the origin. What is the origin? The origin is HTTP protocol. The host or the domain part is this 127.0.0.1. The port is 5500. Right? You see that I have not, added these key value pairs right now. These key value pairs, I think we added the last time we did a session on this local storage and session storage, and they are still here. That means this is a persistent storage. Until and unless I'll clear it explicitly, it won't go away. Okay. I'll just close this. I'm not deleting anything. I'm even closing this. And I am closing this server. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to access the same domain, same protocol, but I'm just going to change the port number. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just open Python HTTP server. So the port number is 80. So see, I'm getting the same thing, right? On the HTML, that is storage APIs. The domain is same, the protocol is same, just the port number is changed. So if I'll go to inspect, and go to local storage, so see, there is nothing. That means when the port changes, the storage object changes, the origin changes. So the origin consists of 3 things: protocol, domain, and port. If any of these 3 things changes, the origin changes. If the origin changes, the storage object changes. I hope this is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one can store JavaScript objects in local storage for a given domain. What do you think? Can you do that? Remember, you can only store string values.
Yeah, we have to do JSON stringify and stuff.
So we
Correct. If you can stringify your object,
stringify the JSON object.
Correct, exactly. So if you can stringify your object, you can very well store it in the local storage as well. So local storage is not supported by IE. It is supported. So the third one is the option that is correct. Well, Internet Explorer is I hope many of you know that it is retired, officially retired. So yes, someone in South Korea has even prepared a gravestone for this Internet Explorer as well on 15th of June.
No, the third option, unless you stringify, then you won't call it as a JavaScript object, right? Until then, only after stringifying, it becomes string, basically. So the statement says one can store JavaScript objects in local storage. That is wrong, right? Only when you stringify, it becomes string, and string you can store. Is it not misleading?
Oh, I feel that as long as you stringify them, you can always store it. So of course, you are storing JavaScript objects in the local storage. I can understand that it is in the string format right now, but of course, it's a JavaScript object. You can fetch it and convert it into an object as well again.
No, correct. And because the form has to be changed when the JavaScript object becomes string, it is no more JavaScript object. You cannot call it as a JavaScript object, right? So the statement says one can store JavaScript objects, which is wrong. Because in the last session also, we tried to store the JavaScript object as it is, and we were not getting anything. That's how the demo went, right? Then we explicitly did stringify, and then we were able to see the values. At that moment, it is no more a JavaScript object. It is a string object, right?
Okay, so what you're saying is that the format has changed.
Yes.
The type has changed.
Exactly. Because that's how we demonstrated. Remember, we created a JavaScript object, and then we tried to save it as it is, and we did not find it in the storage. Then when we stringified it, then we could see the value. So when we stringified it, is no more a JavaScript object. That's why we were able to store. The statement says that one can store JavaScript object in local store. No, it's not correct. Only when you change it to string, you will be able to store it. Maybe that is correct, right?
Okay, so okay, all right. So maybe if we can add just on stringifying or on converting it to string, maybe that would make more sense.
Then that will be a very obvious thing. Probably this will qualify for a false statement. So the statement as it is actually stands little intriguing only when it is a false statement.
All right, I'll just note it down. Maybe I'll just change it after this session. What is the question? Question 9.
But sir, still we are storing the JavaScript object in some special format, right?
Sorry? No, means what Govind is saying is correct. Means the format, the type of that value has changed. It's no more a JavaScript object now. How do you differentiate between a JavaScript object and a string? It's basically the type itself. See, if you say that, suppose this is so, what do you think? Is this a JavaScript object or is this a string? Okay, I would say it's a string. Like, yes. But if I'll just remove these quotes from the left and from the right, then I would say that it's a JavaScript object. Okay. So yeah, the point is making is correct. All right, I'll change that. Yeah, thanks for bringing it up. Okay. Okay. So which of the following statements are true regarding Vuex? So Vuex provides advanced state management functionalities to the Vue application. Now, once again, I would like to discuss the same thing that we discussed in the Vuex session, that not every application requires this Vuex. You basically have to do some study or do some research to find out that whether your application is really in need of Vuex or not. Because we have seen that Vuex comes into picture when we have certain problems, like when we have too many parent to child and child to parent communications. So just to streamline that, we bring Vuex into the picture. so that we have a common place where we can store all of the common data relevant to the application, and all of the components of the application can access that and can make certain changes, and those changes can be tracked. So this is the very first thing that you must keep in mind, that whether your application is really in need of UX or not. If it does not require, of course, you should not use it. Otherwise, it will be an overkill. So it is true that UX provides advanced management functionalities, but that also depends on the application. So in the context of this question, this option is true, but I was just discussing in general. So yeah, the second question, the second option.
Abhishek, I have a question about the first option. The documentation of UX says that it is state management. Okay, yes. It does not qualify it as advanced. So is there any significance of advanced in this option?
No, I would say that means it's a it's a state management library, so we can call it. I didn't get your exact question.
No, the definition is the documentation says, and the description, UX is the state management system, right? Pattern and library, right? And it does not qualify that state management thing with system with advanced. So if I have to put an emphasis on advanced, then this option may not be true, I think, right? It is state management.
I would say that if I'm not using Vuex, I could even create a state management system on my own, right? Let's say if I start using all sort of global variables, I'm also trying to create a sort of a global management system there, or state management system there.
Correct. It is my state management versus Vuex state management. That's all. So it does not it says Vuex provides. Even if I remove advanced, it would be okay. But
it would be
by
okay.
putting advanced, am I changing the sense of the sentence and thereby making it false? I mean, now these actually options are usually very confusing in exams, especially this multi-option questions, right? Sometimes we put emphasis on each and every word.
Advanced state management is going to be a subset of a state management.
May not be, right? Some system can provide only state management, maybe advanced features are not. Advanced features are always additives. They may not be part of the main system. Like additional features.
But as Vuex has mutation property, so we can call this advanced, because it has mutation property and time tracking and all these things.
No, but that is subjective. That is subjective. You may think it is advanced, but I may not be thinking it as advanced. Rather, Vuex documentation itself does not say that it is advanced. It just says that it is state management system. If you open Vuex documentation, it says that Vuex is state management pattern plus library. It does not say advanced anywhere.
So according to you, what qualifies to be a advanced state management library?
No, if you just open it, if you open the Vue documentation, can you?
No. I'm just asking you in general. Means according to you, what would qualify?
I don't know if it is the developer themselves has to say that, okay, this is a basic feature I am providing. In addition to this, there are some certain advanced features. Basic features are something that I have to use them in order to use the functionality, in order to use the Vuex library. It is a bare minimum. Let's say if I have to use Vuex, okay, what is the bare minimum I have to do? I have to do A, B, C. Maybe I have to define actions. I have to define. I have to manage state through actions. Maybe these are the basic things I need to do. Maybe some other things that may be there that are not required to be done as part of using Vuex library. That comes under advanced, right? Even the documentation, if you open it, says that it also integrates Vue's official development dev tool extension to provide advanced features. So advanced features are basically optional features. We can leverage them only when they invoke them only when they are required. Otherwise, basic functionality, whatever it provides, is sufficient to use the Vuex library. I think that qualifies as state management. That may not be advanced, is what is my opinion.
But the thing is, like, which criteria decides that a state management system is a normal or advanced?
No, that's what I'm
So
saying.
if that criteria is present in Vuex, then it is advanced. If that criteria doesn't pass, then it is a normal state management. So that criteria
There is
should
no
be,
standard. No, there is no. It's not like there is a HTTP standard which says that okay, these are the minimum things that a browser should support, and these are the other things that browser may not support. Whatever the things that are optionally provided, they are maybe considered as advanced. Like that, we do not have a standard for state management. It's only a pattern. UX is implementing in certain way. Maybe Redux will implement in some other way. Now, if you see Vuex documentation, it is very clear. In the first line, it says that it is state management, and in the second line, it says that there are certain advanced features through developer extension we can invoke. That is advanced. So whatever Vue provides, we cannot say that okay, this is the advanced or this is the minimum. This is a standard. The only thing is, in order to use Vue, we have to utilize or implement certain necessary parts of the framework. Let's say actions we have to do, we have to define the mutations. So these are some things that necessarily we have to do. So that all comes under normal state management. I don't think that is advanced. If you see the documentation, that's what I gather from the documentation.
Okay, so even as you are mentioning that the first line says that it is a state management library, but the second statement says that there are certain things that could be termed as advanced, right?
Correct, but we need not use them.
Yeah, we need not use them. So what this option is saying, it's saying that Vuex provides advanced state management functionalities. It is nowhere mentioning that all of those advanced features must be used while integrating Vuex with your application.
Yeah, exactly. So my problem is, I mean, my issue is here. In order to select that, basically true or false statement should be universally true or false, right? They should be tautologies, right? If we are making a statement we are as a true, it should be true for everyone.
So according to you, this statement is too generic, is it?
Too liberal. I mean, something like you cannot always say that it is advanced. Now, what is advanced is subjective. Now, whatever the other person, Bhavya, maybe, I think whatever he pointed out, for him, like probably mutations are advanced. But for me, it is like a bare minimum that the framework is providing. Without using them, I will not be able to use Vuex at all. So advanced is subjective, is what I'm saying. So when the statement is subjective, when the option is subjective, then the interpretation will be different. So I may think that it is false and some other person may think it is true, right? Whereas the second one, right? Second one is perfect. That is false, right? I mean, that is false. It's not that you cannot build Vue applications without Vuex. You can build Vue applications without Vuex. So that is like straight interpretation, right? Whereas in case of first one, there is a lot of subjectivity, is what I think.
Okay.
Now, these options actually, for me, I think I got tripped many times with true or false, and especially multiple choice. When one of them is like, it is basically examiner's point of view, right? Like you might have put this option thinking that it is true, and I might have I may not in the exam probably I will not select that option thinking that may be false. So and because if I select and it is intended to be false, and if I select whole question will get wrong, no? So that is the point of view.
for now, can we like skip this question and like first complete this half an hour just left?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, so Govind, yeah, I'll just discuss it with my team members as well, and yeah, maybe we'll see what can be done. Okay, so as far as this question is concerned, okay, so all right, if we keep the first question or the first option apart as of now, so which all other statements are true here? A Vue application cannot be built using Vuex, so that's of course false. It's not always true. So action should mutate the states instead of committing the mutations. What do you think? Actions should mutate the states instead of committing the mutations.
it should false, because action commits the mutation.
All right, yeah. So action should be invoking the mutations, and mutations intent should be making the state changes as required. The getters in Vuex comes handy while computing a derived state of stored data. So as we had seen in the Vuex live session as well, that getters are mostly used just like computed properties. In case you need to compute a derived property of certain state, then you can use those. So yeah, it is okay. The fourth option is, I guess, fine, true. So which of the following statements is false? The use of HTTP verbs is generally discouraged while defining REST API endpoints. Well, even if we have time limitations, I would just like to discuss a bit more on this option. Can someone tell me that what is the idea behind not using verbs in the data URLs itself?
Yeah, I think we discussed this in the live session. The idea is to create REST APIs around the entities and use the HTTP verbs for actual operations as actual functionality of the API.
Correct. Exactly. Okay, so I guess we have already discussed it, is it?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can you explain this a little bit? Like that was not in the live session, so within 2 or 3 minutes, yes.
Okay, sure. Okay, so let me take a generic example, or instead a very specific example. Say in MAD1 lab assignment in week 5, in week 6, or in week 7, you basically worked with 3 entities. One was student, the other one was post, the other one was what was that? I guess enrollments. Okay, so what is happening is that these 3 are the entities that you are using in your application, and you are just going to work with these 3 entities, not outside. So what this first option is saying is that whenever you define a data URL, whenever you define any endpoint in your REST API, you need not include the HTTP verb in the endpoint itself. For example, in case you want to create an endpoint that should support, addition of a student in the database. So what you could do is you have an option to create an endpoint like create student. Similarly, you have option to create an endpoint like add student, something like that, right? So what is happening here is, or maybe you can say, post student, a more technical one. So what is happening here is that post, as you know, is already an HTTP verb. So this option is itself suggesting that you should not use HTTP verb in your data URLs, in your endpoints. The reason is that this information, that whether this request is post or whether this request is get, this is already available in the request. The moment your API is going to get the request, the server already knows that either whether it is a get request or a post request. So instead, what you could do is, why don't you just create an endpoint, a generic endpoint like /student. Now, depending on the nature of the request, the server is going to take the action that which method is to be triggered. Let's say you send a post request to this endpoint, that is student endpoint. Right now, the server knows that this is a post request to this endpoint. Now, this thing is clear that you need to work with, or you want to work with, student entity. Since the nature of the request, the type of the request is post, that means it becomes clear to the server that user is trying to basically create a new student in the database. Right. Similarly, if you're sending a put request, so it becomes clear to the server that the user is, or the developer is trying to update a certain entity in the database. If you go by the endpoints that I have just listed in the first 3 options, like create student, add student, post student. So in that case, what you would be required to do is, let's say if you want to create, or if you want to implement CRUD for this particular entity, for this student, in that case, you would be required to implement 4 different data URLs or endpoints. Let's say create student, or post student, delete student, or put student, or read student, things like that. But if you have a simple enough generic endpoint that says /student, now, depending on the nature, on the type of the request, the server can take a call that which method is to be triggered, because ultimately how a request is responded, it is basically a function that gets triggered. So are you getting my point?
Yes, sir. Yes, got it.
So that's why it is, sorry, someone is saying something. Is someone saying something? Okay. So in that sense, the first option is going to be generally disgraced. So yeah, this is a true option, and we need to find out the false options. So your public LinkedIn URL is an example of permalink. I guess someone even asked it on the discourse as well. So I think that is already clear
sir.
that. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, sir, I had asked it.
Okay. Hello. So yeah, it is possible to change your LinkedIn username, and if you change your LinkedIn username, the profile URL also changes. So that is not an example of a permalink. A request is cacheable in general when the response can be regenerated just after seeing the request URL. That is true because in general, if you see that the get requests are cacheable or easily cacheable in general, but if you want to cache the responses of post request or put request, that is not trivial. I'm not saying that that is something impossible. That can still be done, but that is not a trivial thing to do. I have not even tried caching the responses for post or put, means whoever has a response body, request body. So yeah, that option is okay. We need to find out the false statement. So the second one is the false statement. So Wix is an example of a CMS. Like you would have heard about things like WordPress. So like just like WordPress, is a CMS. In the same way, you can also use Wix in order to create your websites and all. So it is also a type of CMS. Well, we need to find out the false statement. So second one is the false statement. All others are true. Consider the following application with markup index.html and JavaScript file. So what will be rendered inside the router view for home and fruits routes respectively? So fruits, okay, for home, what is happening is you are sending a request to a component who is named as home. So if you go to roots and see which one is named as home, so it is the path slash that is home endpoint, and the component that would be rendered is home. So what home says is route.params. Home. So this says this is home. So when you hit the home or this navigation link, so this is going to generate the output as or render the output as this is home on the web page. Apart from that, if you go to fruits, what is going to happen is, so fruits is this. What is happening is you are sending a request to a component, a route component who's named as fruit, and you are also passing something in the params, in the query parameter. The parameter is fname, whose value is given as apple. So if you go to route here, you see that fruit is the URL that you want to hit from this, because name is fruit and this is the path that is named as fruit. And this fname, the value is given as apple. Right? Remember, we are not using props. That means, we will have to use this route variable here. If you would have used props, then that value would have gone as a prop here and you could have used it directly. But right now that is not being done. So this will go to fruit/fname. It will go here. This page is about route.params.fname. So this simply prints it as it is. So this page is about apple. This is what is going to be rendered on the browser. So the two outputs that will appear, one for home, that is going to be this is home. The second is this page is about apple. The second option is correct. Okay. Before I move to the next question, is there any problem, any issue in this question or even the last question? I forgot to ask that.
No, sir, both are clear.
Okay, so consider we just did 12th question. Yeah. So 13th question. Consider again a view application and a JavaScript file. Suppose the application is running on this. What will be rendered by the browser when the user visits the URL localhost for the first time? So the user is visiting for this to this application for the first time. Now, when the user comes here for the first time, so total is a component, over is a component, and edit score is a component. What is there in the edit score? Edit score is simply a button. So since the question itself says that excluding the button, we have to predict the output. So we can ignore this edit score component as of now. Over is it does not have any button. Total, it even does not have any button. So we basically need to take these two components, first two components, into the consideration for predicting the output. So this total component is passing total score as the prop, and this over component is passing over as the prop. So we need to find out that what the value is for these two variables, total score and over. Now, what could be these? Can someone tell me? Total score and over, either they can be view data variables. Is there any other possibility that they could be something else other than view data variables?
Computed property.
They can be computed properties as well. All right. So total score and over, we need to look at these two. So here are we. Okay, so total score is basically a computed property, and over is an array, a data variable, an array that consists of just one element, 100. So if we need to find out what total score is, so this dot over dot reduce AB. Okay, anyone remembers the way this reduce method works?
All the list elements will be added.
It iterates over the array and computes for every value and then stores again in the A.
But what is the initial value of A?
So there is a single value in the array.
It will be 0.
Why it would be 0?
It is mentioned.
Correct. So what happens is that we basically iterate over this array that is over here. But since there is a single element, that means we'll be iterating just once here. There are two parameters that are given in this reduce method. One is A, the other one is B. So the value of A is provided here as a second argument, that is 0. B will be what? B will be the first element in this array, that is over. So A is 0, B is what? B is 100. So A plus B would be what? 100. Now the value of A would become 100. But since there is no element remaining in the array, we won't go further. So finally, what this returns is, this returns the value 100 itself. And this is what we are returning. So total score returns 100. So here 100 is going to go as the prop, and in over, this is going to be an array which has just one element, that is 100 itself. Now, if we talk about what total component does, so total component, it shows this message, that is total score colon, and this total score that is passed as a prop. So that is 100, we know. So the very first thing that will be displayed is total score colon 100. If we talk about over, so over, we are passing this over again as a prop. Remember, this over is a what? It is an array. So that needs to be iterated over if you need to visit each and every element individually. So what happens is there's a div, you show current over as the message. So yeah, here it is, v4 has been used. What we are doing is you are iterating over that array called over. And what you are doing is you are simply dumping out those values, separating them by a pipe. Since there is just a single element in this array, what will it do is it will show current over this column. The first element in the array, that is 100 itself, and will show a pipe. After that, this array would be extinguished. That means there are no other elements in the array to be visited. So ultimately, what is going to be the output? Total score 100, current over, the value of run is 100 and pipe. So total score 100, current over 100 pipe. So third one is going to be the correct answer. Is that okay? Are there any issues?
No,
So
sir.
could you please explain it once again?
Sorry?
Could you please explain the question once again? I didn't quite understand it.
Okay. So what we need to do is we need to predict the output when the user will open this application for the first time. Now, when the user is opening the application for the first time, you can assume that everything is in the state what is being shown here right now. Okay. So on the HTML page, there are basically three components which are going to be rendered. One is total component, the other one is over, the last one is edit score. The question statement says that we need to print the output excluding the button. And we saw that this edit score component is all about a button. So if you will see the definition of this edit score component, it is basically a button. Right? So we can exclude this edit score component as of now, at least for this question. So we need to look at these two components, that is total and over. So if you will look at these two components, the very first thing you need to look at is that what is this? What is this colon total score? So this is how you pass props to the components in your application. So total score is a prop whose value is what? Total score itself. Now this is either going to be a data variable in your view instance or a computed property. Similarly, with over, this is being passed as a prop to over component. Again, this is going to be either a data variable or a computed property. So let's first talk about total component, and we are passing total score as the prop. So we need to first find out what this total score is, total underscore score. So we found out that this total underscore score, total underscore score is basically a computed property. We need to find out that what it is returning at last. Okay, so we need to find out that how this will be executed in order to predict what the output will be. So this dot over is what? This dot over is something that is defined in the view instance. So over is what? Over is an array which just has one element, that is 100. The way reduce function works is, as everyone has explained, it basically iterates over that array, and what it does is it basically follows the definition of this function given here. The two parameters that are provided to this reduce function are a and b. The initial value of a is provided here, that is 0. The initial value of b is going to be the first element in this array, that is over, and that is also 100. So what will happen is, when this will execute for the first time, this reduce function will execute for the first time. A value is 0, b value is 100. What does it do? It just adds up both and return. Whatever value it returns, this value is basically given to what? A. So it is going to return 0 plus 100. So it would return 100, and this 100 would be given to A, and B value would be changed to what? To the next element in the array. That is next element in this over array. But what is the next element? There is no more. There are no more elements in this array. So that means we would stop here itself, and we would assume that the last iteration that we performed, that is going to be the last iteration itself. The first iteration is going to be the last iteration. So this expression, that is this dot over dot reduce, whatever it is written, the entire expression is going to return a value of 100. So total is going to receive a value of 100, and it is what is going to be written. Is that part clear, that how the 100 value is being written?
Yes, sir, but a doubt in the reduce method. A will take the value of the initiator, right? In this case, we have defined it to be 0. Otherwise,
Yes.
it would be taking the value specified, correct?
Whatever value you will specify here, that would be given to you. Right now, it is 0.
Right, sir. So whenever I give the reduce function an array and the initiator is 0, then my first element always goes to B, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right, sir. Got it.
So now, since 100 is being returned by this total score, 100 will go here. We need to look at the total component. Total component is here. Props is total score. The value of it is 100. So total score 100 is going to be shown on the browser. So you first need to visit all of the options which are showing total score 100. Well, that's the only option. So of course, that is going to be the output. But just to find out that how the next component shows its output. So this over is again a component, and this is passing a prop as over itself. So what is over? We just saw that over is an array that has just one element, that is 100. Okay. So now you will go into this over component. You will show current over, and after that you will start iterating over this array. That is, the name of that array is over, so that should not create confusion. So we are iterating over this array, and we need okay. So we already know that there are basically not enough elements in this array. There is just a single element, and when that element is visited, that would be shown here. So the value of this run would be what? It would be 100. That is the first element in that array. After that, you show a pipe, right? The next time you will try to iterate.
How did we find out that run will be the first element of the array?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Sir, how did we find out that run will be the first element of the array?
How did we find out?
That the run will be the first element of the array.
No. This run is just a variable. Just like you write a loop in Python for I in range, or for I in a list. So I is what? I is basically a variable.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it.
So run is going to get the first value in the array, that is 100. If there would have been more elements in the array, it would have gotten the second element, then third element, fourth element, and so on. Okay. But right now,
so just here run in over is referring to the const over.
over is referring to what you have passed here, over. So this over is what? That is defined here. Here.
Data element. So
yeah,
by mistake, if I in the v4, if I misspell this over, then it won't work.
No, it won't work.
Okay.
Okay. So now, yeah, what will it show is it will show current over and run, that is 100 and a pipe. So that's why this third option would be the correct option.
If there would have been an option without, without a pipe, then that would be a little confusing.
If there would have been an option
without pipe symbol,
that would
like
have been
total score 100, current over 100.
Okay, so what you're saying is
two options. There would have been two options, one like this and one without the pipe symbol. Then it could be a little
difficult to
someone
answer,
could commit a mistake.
Yeah, all right. Yes, got it. Yes, of course, that option would be wrong in such case. Anyway, so who asked that question? So Bhavya, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Great. Just give me 2 minutes, please. Yeah, sorry for the delay. Okay, so I hope this question number 13 is clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So question number 14. So consider the same view application as given in. Okay, so we need to look at the same code again. What will be rendered by the browser when the user clicks on the button add run 6 times? So we are clicking on that button 6 times.
What does excluding button means?
Excluding button means you don't have to consider the button to be in the output. So what would happen is that along with this output, a button will also be shown on the screen. So you don't need to worry about that button.
Okay.
So yeah. Now, since there is a button called add run, so that is defined in the edit score component. So we have to see that what it is doing, or clicking this button is going to do what. So this is basically emitting an event. The name of that event is add run event. This is being handled at this level. So we on add run event, and in turn, what it is doing is it is invoking a function add run. So add run should be defined somewhere in view, that is here. Okay. Okay, so what it does is it has defined an expression here, and something is happening. So we first need to find out that what is the value of this dot count. So this is basically a ternary operation, a conditional expression. So the value of count is true. Now, so the way this ternary operator works is that if the value or the expression that is given on the left hand side of this question mark, if this is evaluated to true, then the first expression is evaluated. If this evaluates to false, then the second expression is evaluated. That means the expression written after column. So this is how we write a ternary operation. Okay. So this dot count, we know that it is initialized with value true. So this is going to be true. That means what it is going to do is it is going to push an element 6 in the over. Remember, over had just one element previously, that was 100. But now you are pushing one more element to that, and you are making two elements in that array now, that is 100 and 6. And after doing that, what we are changing is you are basically reversing the value of count. So previously it was true, now it is false. But remember, the question says that we are clicking on this button 6 times. So the first time you click on this, the value is true. So this pushes 6 to the array. Next time it becomes false. So this becomes false. That means the second expression would be evaluated. So it pushes 4. Again, value becomes true. Since value becomes true, it pushes 6. Value becomes false. It pushes 4. Value becomes 6. It pushes 6. Oh, sorry, value becomes true. It pushes 6. Value becomes false. It pushes 4. So basically, it is going to push 6 elements in that array. Those 6 elements are 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4. So that means the over array has now how many elements? Can someone tell?
7.
7.
7 elements. Those elements are 100, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4. Okay. Now we need to find out that what is going to be the value of total score. Okay. So we need to compute it using this reduce method. So what is going to happen is the value of A is 0, the value of B is 100. So 0 plus 100 is 100. 100 will go to A, B will get the value 6, 100 plus 6, 106. A will get 106, B will get 4, 106 plus 4, 110. A will get 110, B will get 6. So the output will be 116. A will get 116, B will get 4. The output would be 20. A will get 120, B will get 6. So output will be 126. A will get 126, B will get 4. So output will be 130. So this total is going to be 130. This is what is going to be returned here. What this total component does is it simply shows this output as it is on the screen. So total score is going to be 130. If we talk about over, remember this time over has 7 elements in the array. So when you are iterating over it, this is going to be iterated 7 times. What it shows is current over. The first element is 100, pi. Next element is 6, pi. Then 4, pi, 6, pi, 4, pi, 6, pi, 4, pi. Okay. So the final output is going to be total score is 130, current over 100 pipe, 6 pipe, 4 pipe, 6 pipe, 4 pipe, 6 pipe, 4 pipe. Yes, Chandrasekhar.
So if this is over, I'm having one doubt.
Yes. No, I just want to know that if this thing is clear to everyone.
Yes, sir, this one is clear.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Tell me.
This last one, sir. Current over will store the array with 7 elements.
Yeah.
And that is how it is iterating over all those 7 elements and then printing.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Chandrasekhar.
And towards the end, please revisit question 11, option C and D.
Question 11. Okay. So what we generally say is that a request is cacheable in general. So see, if you're looking at from the application point of view, where most of your caching will happen, it will happen at the proxy level. Now, if you're saying that most of your caching is happening at the proxy level, what proxy server is able to view in the request? It is just able to see the request URL. It cannot see what the request body is, right? Because that will only be visible when the request will go to the actual server. So what proxy server can see at that time is the URL. And if the server knows that how to respond to such request just after seeing the URL, then it is easier to cache such kind of request. But if request has some request body or some data that is available in the request body, say the endpoint is same. Again, let's take the example. Let's say the endpoint is /student, but there is a lot of body or a lot of data that is going.
Suppose it's a GET request, then it can be responded. If it's a post, then it has to go to the actual server.
Yes.
Okay. Wix, what is like WordPress kind of thing?
Wix is just like WordPress. I hope you would have heard about WordPress.
Yes, through you only.
Yeah, just like that. Yes, you can also build websites.
Okay.
So Chandrasekhar, you were asking something.
Sir, I was having one doubt from
This question
graded
15
assignment
is-
7.
Question number 7.
No, sir. Graded assignment 7. After
graded
this, I
assignment
can ask. Yeah.
So probably we can just finish this last
Yes,
question.
yes.
Then. So we need to predict or find out the true statements regarding local and session storage. So both the local and session storage maintain separate storage areas for each given origin. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, this is correct. It is not possible to access individual key value pairs even if the keys are known.
This is false.
So
This is false.
first one is correct. Why? Because after the session is terminated, then session storage is deleted. That is why
exactly.
it has
The
to
first
be.
option is the correct option. Second one is
Yeah,
not the
I mean
session storage.
that is the reason, because session storage has to be deleted after the session is terminated. That is why it has to be stored separately.
Yeah, of
I
course.
Okay.
Yeah, I got your point.
No,
Okay.
no, that is not the only reason. Even for a local, within local storage, if I think we discussed a little while ago, if port, host, and scheme, right? If any of these three change, then it will be a separate storage. Like the discussion was, if there is abc.com and if there is xyz.abc.com, both are of different origins. And since they are different origins, the local storages will be different.
Okay, so the question basically says it is talking collectively about local and session storage, but the agenda to discuss is origin. That means whether both of these changes for each different origin or not. It's not about that local storage and session storage are different for a given origin. Yeah, so what Govind said is correct. Yes. This is what we discussed in details just a few minutes ago in the session. So the session storage never gets cleared unless the user deletes it manually for a given origin. That is true for local storage, but not for session storage. None of the session or local storage can be inspected using the browser's developer tools. So that is again what I used to say.
Could see through the inspect.
Yeah, of course. We have been seeing it using inspect, so that's not correct. That's false.
And what is second option, sir?
Second option is it is not possible to access individual key value pairs even if the keys are known. So let's say if you have stored a key value pair, say the name, the key's name, the value is Abhi. So can you access that individual key value pair if you know that you need to access name, even if there are multiple key value pairs stored in the local storage? See, what I'm saying is, let's say you have stored a number of key value pairs in your local storage. Is it possible for you to access a given key value pair or a particular key value pair if you just know the key name?
Yes, definitely we can access.
Yeah, so that's what the question says. It just says the reverse of that, that it is not possible for you to access that particular key value pair if you know the key.
Okay.
Sir, one small clarification regarding the session storage. That I searched for this, and some article says that session storage gets cleared when we close the tab.
Okay.
But sir, in our IITM like website, after like few weeks, the session is like terminated. So what is the difference between these? Like,
See, session and session storage are two different things. Session storage is different and the session is different.
Okay, sir, got it.
What is the difference?
Session is basically the time period during which you will be or you will stay connected to the server.
Correct.
But session storage is something that,
So when I
that will get
terminate,
cleared if you will even, yeah.
When I close the tab, then that session gets terminated. No?
No, the value stored in the session storage will be cleared.
Yeah. So that is the browser session. But you are talking about a session that is maintained on the server. Okay, so Chandrasekhar, you were talking about which question?
It's a graded assignment question 2. I just wanted to ask one thing.
7 and 2. Yes.
Yeah, this first part, that is app.js. So that is the router view is mentioned here. Can you just explain how it is going to work in that case?
So see, if router view is mentioned here, that means you are working with the children components. That means this is basically a root component, and there should be something that is defined as a children to this component. So if I read the question says that user visits the URL player Rohit. So player is basically the root component, and Rohit is one of its children components. So if you will look at the paths here, so you can see that this is the entire path, player and name. The component that is to be called is player. But if you will look at the children, so children defines that there are certain paths. Okay, so for example, if it is /player /Rohit, so since there is nothing after Rohit, it is going to be caught at this level. That is path this. But if after name there would have been a /test, it would have gone to this test. If after /, if it would have been one day, it would have gone to this component. Now, if you will not use this router view here, then none of these components would get rendered. That means right now, if you are getting the output of one day, what is one day? One day says one day runs something. There should be some value here runs. So let's say this is 10,000. Now this won't be shown on the screen until and unless you write router view here. So router view is what? It is used to display the content that is fetched using urouter.
So I wanted to ask, Miss, I got now that is because of child we are using router view here. So far we use this router view in the HTML page.
Yes.
First time we are using this in app.js, and it is because we are having child. So whenever we'll, yeah, now this is clear, sir. Fine.
And so here in the children, the order of the paths, different path is important.
Yes, path is always important. So
no,
it is first
order, how the order is given.
Yes, order is also important. That means it is first going to check with this, then this, then this. So that's why you are required, or you are supposed to put the wildcard endpoint at the last. If you will put it in the beginning, then everything is going to be masked, and you are going to get something big on your application. That wildcard means that /1. Oh, sorry, /1. Sorry, that asterisk one. That is generic endpoint. That is going to be matched with each and every endpoint.
So here path is player / name. So
name means it is a prop. It is a dynamic value. Not actually a prop, but a dynamic value. Here we have set it to props. That means this name will go as a prop to that component, whichever is being invoked.
No, so here component one day is available twice in the children component.
Yes.
So how the third path will come, like refer to one day?
This depends on you. You can even have same component for each of these paths. It depends on you. For this question, yes, these two are same, but ideally you would not have these because if there is nothing in the endpoint, you would want the user to be redirected to this one day component. If the endpoint is this test, then you would want the user to be shown this test component value. If the endpoint is one day, then you would be wanting to show user something different. Well, in generally it should be different, but it's your choice. You can even keep everything same.
So first one is like default behavior to show one day runs.
It's not a default behavior. It means that if there is nothing given after name, then this would be invoked. It's not default.
Okay. I mean, player Rohit and nothing after that, then it will display the, I mean, currently it will display the one day data.
Correct.
And
so for this URL Rohit, that is given in this question, player Rohit, yeah, yes, it will come to this.
So after Rohit, if one specifies either test or one day, so that specifying one day will be like explicitly asking for one day, which would have otherwise been a default output.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Sir, can you please summarize once the commit and dispatch, please?
Okay. So if we just try to recall that what an ideal life cycle of UX store looks like is that a component must dispatch an action. An action should commit a mutation, and finally the mutation should make the state change. So this is the ideal hierarchy that you should be following. That means an action should not directly be changing the state variables. The difference between mutations and actions is that you cannot write asynchronous code in your in your mutations. That means you cannot use fetch calls in your mutations. The reason is that they are always supposed to be synchronous. But of course, it is always required. It is many a times required that you need to fetch some data asynchronously. So that's where these actions come in. So what you do is you fetch the data using actions. You pass that data to your mutations by committing mutations, and those mutations should make the required state changes. So dispatch is used for actions, for invoking action functions, and commit is used for invoking mutations. Is that clear?
Yes, clear.
All right. So are there any other questions?
Yes, practice assignment 5, question 5.
Okay, practice assignment 5, question 5. So practice. Okay. So consider the following JavaScript program and project output if executed. So what is happening is that this promise is getting two parameters, resolve and reject. So resolve will be invoked when the promise resolves. Reject is used for rejection purpose here. There is a function that you're defining here, but are you calling this function? Yes, you are calling this function here, some abhi and abhi. So you're calling it here, and then you check that if A equals to B. So this thing matches here. So it goes to resolve, and then it says matched. All right. So see, since you are passing abhi and abhi, so these two are identical values. So do you think this condition would become true?
Yes, sir, because we have coercion in JS.
Sorry, we have
coercion. So they will naturally be equated because normally double equal is used for the same value.
Okay, so
or
you
the
are
same
saying that
position of
even
value.
that the coercion can also happen in case these values are matching after making the coercion, but these values are even matching without making any coercion. Okay, so what is going to happen is you are calling this resolve with the message matched, right? That means this promise is going to be what? Resolved. Now, since this promise is going to be resolved, remember again the thing that I have been insisting for these two things. That means the name does not matter. What matters is the position. What matters is the order. Similarly, here the order matters. You are required to write your resolve function as the first parameter to this then. Right? Doesn't matter whether it is fail or whether it is pass. It is always going to be the handler function for handling the resolution of the promise or the fulfillment of the promise. Okay. So what will happen is this resolve matched will come here, and it is going to show pass summary matched. This is going to be the output.
Right, sir, got it. Answer question 6 of the same week.
Sir, in this question, this function sum is written for the resolve part of the promise.
Yeah.
But there's so else if we have written reject twice.
We have written
reject function twice.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not getting your exact point.
No,
so is this the issue?
Okay. Not issue, like there could be situation we can write resolve function also, I mean multiple times.
Yeah, of course. resolve, just treat them like return. You can write return even 10 times in a function depending on certain conditions, whether it is false or true. Similarly, you can write resolve and resolve at multiple places depending on your conditions.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, so after sum abhi, what will happen is that matched will get returned, and I'm not able to understand what is happening. So the match is getting passed into the next half, is it? I'm not able to understand.
Matched will be passed here to this pass parameter. So this pass parameter is having value matched. Now, when you will go and execute this statement, that is console.log, so pass summary is going to be printed as it is, and it is going to print the value of this variable called pass. And what this pass is going to get is, it is going to get this matched value. Because this is the handler that is handling the fulfillment of the promise. And whenever a promise fulfills or resolves, whatever the message it provides, it will come here to this pass. And whenever the promise rejects, that value will come here to this fail.
Got it, sir.
So here in the last line, dot catch is not visible, correct?
That catch is not there. That means if this promise results into an error, this program will generate an error. But in case this promise rejects, then this fail would be able to catch that.
Yeah, but for that, dot catch is not visible in this.
Yeah, you are not required to use catch if you are sure that your promise is not going to generate an error. If your promise can be rejected, it is okay. If it is rejected, then this next callback function, this next handler, that is this fail, this can take care of that. Remember, we are passing two callbacks here, right? Inside them, there are two callbacks. One is this pass, there is a comma here, and then there is the next callback, that is fail. Or sorry, not callback, basically the function.
Okay.
So the first function is going to take care of the fulfillment. The second function is going to take care of the rejection. But if this promise results into an error, then there is nothing to take care of here. Okay, someone was saying the next question. So what is happening here is we have created a function called foo. What you are doing is you are passing false here. So you pass false here, you create a promise, resolve and reject. So since you are passing x to be false, so resolve won't happen. It will go to else. It will reject with value 3. So this promise is rejected. It will come here. So since this is rejected, this will be called, and what it is going to show is, it is going to show 3. Yeah, it is going to show 3.
So which statement will P or Q?
Q.
Like both will be executed, right?
No. See, like just I mentioned here that there are two functions. One function is going to take care of fulfillment. The other function is going to take care of the rejection of the promise. Similarly, here, the first function is going to take care the fulfillment of the promise. This Q1 means the function which is
Right,
having
sir, got
Q as
it.
a parameter.
Got it, sir.
Please
So,
keep
sir,
this
Q
order in your
takes
mind.
what P returns, right?
Sorry?
Q takes what P returns, correct?
No.
Like,
No. These two are independent functions. They both have nothing to do with each other. This function will be invoked when this promise resolves, this foo, that means the promise returned by this foo function, and this function will get invoked when this promise rejects. They have nothing in common except that promise.
oh, sorry. So one is taking care of resolving, the other is taking care of rejection. I mean,
Yes.
giving the output of each. Got it,
Yes.
sir. Got it.
So here the parameter to foo is false.
Yes. The parameter given to this foo function is false. That means this x will get the value false. And this condition will become false in that case, and the else part would be executed. Else part is rejecting this promise.
Okay, because it is calling reject, which is the second parameter in promise. That is why it will go to Q, not
Correct.
dot then. In the dot then part, it will go to Q.
Yes.
If
So
we
see,
would
there
have
are two ways through which you
reversed
can
the order in promise, then it would have gone to P part.
if what you said?
Reverse the order, say new promise reject resolved. Then
Yeah,
it
in
would
that case, it will go to P. Yes.
Okay.
So there are basically two things or two methods through which you can handle the rejection of a promise. One thing or first way is this, that you pass second function to this then itself. The second way is to handle it using catch.
Yeah, so dot then will be having only one function and then dot catch.
Yeah, in case you don't want to handle the rejection in the then itself, then you can write catch. It's up to you. So what catch can take care of is it can take care of rejection as well as any error that occurred while resolving or rejecting the promise.
I mean, handling the rejection in dot then, it is better to go for dot catch.
Why it's better means, of course,
I
if
mean, it
something.
can handle the error also.
Yeah, of course, that can be done. But yeah, that's what I said means here there is no chance of getting an error. For example, if you're writing such definition. So if you're sure that your function is never going to result in any error, then maybe you could go with that. But again, that's a choice.
But remember, we can have multiple thens, but only one catch. So
no. You can have multiple catches as well.
Okay, if we have multiple thens and multiple catches, then let's say which catch gets invoked?
The first one in the hierarchy. The closest one.
Of second one?
In case you, okay, let's say catch handles the error or the rejection. After that, catch returns something that is caught by the next then in the chain. Now that then result in an error. So that's where the next catch in the chain will come into play.
No. If there are two thens and two catches, you're saying second catch is for second then, or it's not like that, right?
Can you just write in the chat that what is your hierarchy? Is it then catch, or is it then catch, then catch?
No. The point is here in this case, you said there are two ways to handle the rejection.
Yes.
One is to put a reject handler in the then clause.
Yes.
Or to add a catch. So the point I was adding is like if there are multiple thens, each then can have its own reject handler. The second then's reject handler is based on the logic that is written in the first then, right? The second then's reject handler gets invoked based on what we are doing in the first then.
Okay. Got it.
Right? So whereas the catch is a universal thing, like it is like for all thens, like you can have one catch, I thought. Now you added saying that there could be multiple catches.
Yes.
So then I was thinking like how those the second catch gets invoked.
Okay. So let me tell you. Let me write a hierarchy here. Suppose there is a then. Then a catch. I hope it is readable, right?
Yes, sir.
Suppose the promise got resolved. So what will happen is it will go, or the message will come to this first then. Supposing, assuming that this then is just taking care of the fulfillment of the promise. Now, while handling the fulfillment, what you did was you wrote something wrong, and what it resulted in is it resulted in an error. And since it resulted in an error, this catch is going to take care of that error. Is it true?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Now, this catch is going to return something. And whatever this catch returns, that is going to be caught by this then, right? This catch is going to return some value after doing all of the processing. If this does not return anything, this is going to return undefined. And this will be caught by this then. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
No, correct. If there are, is it possible that I can have then catch?
You can have that, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly. So that's what I was initially when you said two catches, then I thought you were saying then catch. Then in that case, second catch may not be meaningful.
yeah, if you if you talk about the technicality of it, it is even possible. Let's say while handling the error or while handling the rejection of the promise, you even made some mistakes in this catch definition, and it basically resulted in an error. So that error would be caught by the immediately next catch block. That is also possible. Right? So let's say you have something like this. Yes.
Is it like we made some mistake in the catch block itself?
Yes. Correct. So if this catch block resulted into an error, then the next catch block would be executed to take care of that error. Are you getting my point, Govind?
Yes, sir.
So you can have as many as thens, as many as catches in the chain.
So, but after this, then catch, again, if dot then is there, so the first catch, if it doesn't result in any error, then the second catch will be ignored.
Then the second
catch will be ignored, and it will directly go to the dot then after that.
Yes, yes, correct.
So catch like has a return statement. Is that it? So once catch is executed, nothing else will get executed.
Just like then has a return statement, similarly catch also has. If you don't return anything explicitly, it would return undefined.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions? Let me stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Okay, so all the very best to all of you for your quiz exam tomorrow. So we'll have a discussion after the quiz exam, how it was, probably on the next Tuesday. Then we'll see. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Have a nice day, sir.
Sir, could there be any numerical type of question?
Sorry?
Hello. Could there also be any numerical type of question, like theory questions?
Numerical like means that involves mathematical calculations?
Yes, yes.
You may get some, but you won't get very complex calculations. It is quite possible that, like we just saw that reduce method. Right? These kind of questions are quite possible.
Okay, got it.
But it's not like you will require a calculator there. Yeah, it is not even. Okay, so yeah, once again, all the best to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session.
Thank you, sir.
Bhavya, yes, please.
Sir, PS6 question 3. My mic wasn't working at that time.
Which one?
Practice assignment 6, question number 3.
Okay. Okay, I'll have to share my screen as well. So this is the question, is it?
Yes, sir.
So may I know that what the exact issue is?
Sir, if we are not submitting the data, then how do we get the values in the text box? Because we haven't clicked anywhere, so the data isn't recorded.
So what it says is that say you open the index.html file in a browser and write a B in the text input shown on the screen and force reload the page without clicking anywhere. What will be the value in the input text class applied to the paragraph in input text? Okay. So this is basically the event that is making the difference. The event is change. So this change event gets triggered whenever you type any character in the text input box or you delete any character. So since you are writing Abhi, the moment you press the last key, that is I, this function will get triggered, that is check. What this check will do is, this check will check if the length of that name is greater than 3. Of course, the length of the name is of course greater than 3. So it will change the status of is error to false, and it is going to put the name, that is Abhi, in the local storage, and the value of is error false into the local storage. Now, the next time you refresh it, the page is again loaded, this mounted hook gets triggered. You see that local storage.name, so it is going to be Abhi, so this condition will get true. So local storage.name, this .name is going to be Abhi, this .is error is going to be false. So what will be shown on the text box is going to be Abhi. So this is basically the event that is making the difference change. That gets invoked, as soon as you enter some text in the text box or you delete some text. If this event would have been input, then it requires you to click outside the input text box so that this event can get triggered. But for change, it is not required.
Got it,
So
sir. Thank you.
how will it decide when to stop? Suppose I'm entering some characters in the text box, then even the first character, if I enter,
the function will be invoked for every change. That means if you are writing Abhi, I just jumped out directly to I. It would have been invoked for A, for B, for H, and for I as well, for everything.
Then it will keep storing A, then AB, then ABH, like that.
Yes.
Okay, so 4 iterations basically in this case.
Yeah, it will be invoked 4 times. If you stop after writing A, it will just invoke first for the first time.
Okay.
Okay, Bhavya, is there any other thing?
Sir, can you explain after
No, sir, that's
refreshing
it.
what is happening here in this question only?
Yeah, can you explain what?
After refreshing, what is happening exactly?
After refreshing?
Force reloading.
Yes, force reloading. Yes.
Huh. What are you asking? No, I'm not getting your question. What did you say?
The is error value is becoming true after writing away. That is, and it is getting stored in the local storage. Am I right? And after refreshing, the value will again become false, right?
Yeah.
After force reloading.
Yeah. So what you are asking is that how this expression is getting true, how this class is being applied, is it?
Yes, I'm exactly right.
So the simple.
It is becoming.
Okay, we understand that the value of is error is false. But when you fetch it from the local storage, remember that everything from the local storage that will be fetched is going to be of string type. So this .is error is not a Boolean value that is false. It is a string value that is having 4 characters or 5 characters instead, FALSE. So this is error is basically a true expression. The reason is it is not an empty string. Since this is not an empty string, this will become true, and that's why this is the class pattern danger that would be applied to that paragraph.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay, so Bhavya, you don't have any other thing, right?
No, sir, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
So because of this string type, this is error is giving a true, returning true.
Exactly. Yes.
When can it return false, sir?
If it would have been an empty string.
But how that will happen in this current code structure?
If you want to make it false, what you should do here is you should convert it into the Boolean type here itself while fetching it. You apply Boolean.
Okay, and keeping it under Boolean and within brackets.
Yes. Then it would become false, a Boolean false, and that's when this button success class would be applied to this paragraph.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll again stop sharing. I hope no one has anything else, right? Can I stop sharing?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session.
Okay. All right. So I think we can formally close this session now. So at last, once again, best of luck for your exam tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
Have a nice weekend.